Senator Menendez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Donovan, I appreciate the answers you've already given on public housing and Section 8, so I won't go over those, but I do appreciate those answers. Let me ask you, the impact of the housing crisis and the foreclosure crisis is being felt across the country, but there is a universe that has no ability to protect themselves from the results, and those are children. They are about 2 million children who will be impacted by the foreclosure crisis. 330 school districts are already reporting enrolling more homeless students in the first 3 months of the school year than they had enrolled in all of last year. And of course, this creates developmental delays for young children. It creates more difficult challenges for older children to stay in school. It makes it harder for enrolled students to succeed. So we've worked very hard. I know that we worked with the chair on getting provisions here to try to help school districts, and I think there's something that we're trying to work on in the stimulus and McKinney-Vento. But as HUD Secretary, would you commit yourself to working with those of us on the committee who are interested in this, particularly the needs of homeless children, and would you address family homelessness through such mainstream HUD programs as Section 8, along with ensuring that HUD's McKinney-Vento homeless assistance programs maintain the current incentives that penalize local efforts to address homelessness for children, youth, and families?
Senator, thank you for asking a very important question, because this is a troubling trend, frankly, that we're seeing in New York City and across the country as a result of the current crisis, is an increase in family homelessness. And so there's a range of things, I think, as you correctly point out, that we need to do to respond to this. One of the early promising efforts that I think can be addressed, and you allude to it in your question, is how do we craft HUD's programs and responses to make sure that we have an effective prevention effort, as well as the longer-term supports like Section 8 vouchers and others for affordable housing. It is cheaper and, frankly, a much better result for a family to be able to stay in their existing home. And it's one that we've begun to see some promising efforts in our home-based program in New York City. So I think it can be an effective part of an overall response to family homelessness. The only other thing I would say is that I think the good news here, if there is any, is that there has been a dramatic, really, movement across the country over the last decade or so that has focused energy around the problem of homelessness among individuals, and that we've made an enormous amount of progress on that. And so I think if we can focus the same kind of energy and partnership that we've had at the local level, organizations in your state and others have been leaders on this, and partner it with HUD, we can make the same kind of progress on family homelessness that we have on individual homelessness. And a part of that, frankly, is we had data and research that really showed the results. One of the reasons why we've been able to make progress, I was part of a negotiation with between the city and the state where we committed $1 billion of new funding for ending homelessness. And the reason that we could get such consensus is because we could demonstrate the fact that it actually saved money, that investing in supportive housing reduced the cost, whether it was of jail stays or shelters, a range of other more expensive and, frankly, much less humane approaches to homelessness. So I think we can bring that same kind of effort and energy to the issue of family homelessness, and it's one that needs attention, as you rightly point out right now.
Well, we look forward to working with you on that. Secondly, I mentioned in my opening statement about this report that just came out that the federal government may very well be ill-equipped to stop the migration of predatory subprime lenders to the rapidly growing U.S.-backed home loans, and raising the specter of another cycle of lending abuse is something we definitely don't want to see. HUD officials told our colleagues in the other side of the Capitol that the FHA lacks the sufficient staff, the adequate technology, and the legal authority to screen questionable lenders who seek to participate in the issuance of federally backed loans. And they went on to say that their oversight shortcomings aren't limited to lenders. Its reviews of appraisers are not adequate to reliably and consistently identify and remedy deficiencies. Talked about an audit found that the government's roster of appraisers included over 3,400 with expired licenses, nearly 200 that have been disciplined by the states, and on and on and on. So the last thing we want to see is a continuation of what happened in the private side of the marketplace move to the government side of the marketplace. Is that something that you will be focusing your attention on when you are?
Absolutely, Senator. That has to be a top priority at FHA.
And lastly, 40 years after the passage of the Fair Housing Act, a good part of our country remains highly segregated. Of more than 4 million estimated fair housing violations annually, only 27,000 complaints are processed. Of these, HUD's Office of Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity only charged 31 cases and has failed, in my view, to address the continuing systemic discrimination nationwide. As HUD Secretary, would you reform HUD's fair lending programs to assure that discrimination in lending is addressed? And how do you view the role of HUD in addressing discrimination and segregation as we move forward?
Senator, thank you for asking that question, because I think this is a very important piece of HUD that, frankly, too often doesn't get the kind of attention that it deserves. And let me just say personally, one of the reasons I do the work that I do is because when a family chooses a home, be it a renter or an owner, they choose often a public school for their child. They choose a set of services. How good is the policing in that area? They choose access to jobs. They choose so many things that affect the very fabric of their lives. And so if we can't ensure access, equal access to housing, I frankly think we can't fulfill the promise of opportunity that this country holds out. And so we must make sure that fair housing is a real priority at HUD. And you quoted the numbers that those 31 cases are down from about 3 times that number in 2001 and about 4 times that number from the height of HUD's efforts. So I am significantly concerned about the needing stronger enforcement of fair housing. And you have my pledge that I will look at that. I also think that there's a very important report, the Kemp-Cisneros report, that, as you know, I think has some very important conclusions that I think HUD needs to look very closely at in terms of understanding where its fair housing efforts need to go.
Well, I appreciate your answers and the answers you gave me personally when we met, and I look forward to supporting your nomination.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was an eloquent answer, by the way, let me say, to the question posed by Senator Menendez.